Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? Are the Bills in trouble after a flat performance? Are the Rams poised for a late season surge? One of the best teams in the NFL has a quarterback problem. We've got NFL Week 14 reactions, plus the college football playoff controversy. We're going to jump into that, and we're going to discuss why the new 12-team format already needs to be fixed. But first, joining me as always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
What an incredible Sunday of football. You all may not think so, but as a Raider fan, and losing and other teams winning has put us in the prime position. So I'm a very happy camper today.
Oh my gosh, Alex. Only you would be happy with the Raiders loss. But hey, look, I get it. The season for you guys has been over for a while. When you're looking towards the NFL draft and you're looking for hope at the most important position, you know you're going to need to draft really high in this draft. So for Raider fans, I get it. You're looking at Shedeur Sanders. You're looking at guys like Cam Ward and kind of fingers crossed here down the home stretch. But I want to start with that Bills-Rams game. This game was an absolute shootout. Bills, like I mentioned there in the intro, they really showed up flat in this game. Rams came out firing. They looked like the more desperate football team. This was a trap game. I think you nailed that perfectly. They were looking ahead to next week. Bills defense, which, look, is actually fourth best in points allowed this season, just did not show up for this game. I mean, absolutely no show. And it took an absolutely incredible game from Josh Allen for them to get back in this game and make it close. Becomes the first player in NFL history with 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns in the same game. I mean, the guy is absolutely unreal. He's the best player in the game, and it's not close right now. Give me your thoughts on this game and where these two teams are going right now. I think, we know the Bills and kind of what they are. I think they're going to be fine, but this was a big loss as far as playoff seeding.
Josh Allen, I mean, he won all the way around. He's firmly put himself in position for the MVP. He's firmly put people who are making a last-minute surge in fantasy playoffs, because if I'm not mistaken, he has scored the most fantasy points since 1950. I don't think they were playing fantasy football, but that's the piece I saw from ESPN, the fantasy gurus, that he's had the most points as a quarterback in fantasy football. So take a bow if you drafted Josh Allen in the first round. But as for him and as for the game, yes, they came out flat. I knew they would, but this was a shootout. I always say that the Rams are a very, very, very young defense. That'll probably, in the next 2 years, we'll probably start to see them start to surge a little bit more. But right now, they're just not ready. They're right where I thought they would be. They're around that hovering around 500 right now. Then in position, maybe if the ball goes left or right, where they can make a last-minute surge. But the Bills, with all the effort from Josh Allen, with everything going on, I mean, I was wondering where James Cook was. Their running game was non-existent, and then he had to turn into Superman, which is fine, as long as you're not doing it every game. Outside of Josh Allen, the other running back had 20 yards rushing. That's it. And Curtis Samuel, as a wide receiver, had 1 yard rushing. So the 103, 82 of them, plus 3 touchdowns, came from Josh Allen. So he was not the issue here. The issue here is what I've been saying about Buffalo Bills all season long. This defense is soft and it's Swiss cheese. And when you get a quarterback and when you get a guy like McVay who knows how to scheme some things up, Puka Nacua went absolutely crazy. 12 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, he was just catching every single thing. And not to be oversold, Cooper Kupp came in with 5 and 92 and a touch. And Matthew Stafford as a whole, 320 and 2 TDs. They just basically played their game and said, you want to go toe-to-toe with us? Well, okay, you're in the wrong spot to do that. And you don't want to do that with the coach that we have and the weapons that we have. And they showed up and showed out. But again, the story of the game, even though they lost, is still going to be Josh Allen and his performance and where he is now, as I say, firmly in control of his own destiny for the MVP. And just really quick, the top 5 is Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Lamar, Jared Goff, and Mahomes at 5.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I have no idea why Mahomes is even on the list. We know how great he is, but he is not playing anything close to an MVP level. And look, we know Mahomes has the playoff success, and we know that. And he's got the rings to back it up. But right now, it's not even close. The most talented quarterback in the league is Josh Allen. I mean, and this guy is just playing on a whole nother level. The Chiefs are struggling to put up 20 points a game right now and are barely winning each week with defense and special teams. It's just unbelievable what we're seeing from this guy. And I think, to your point, the defense, look, it's not the 85 Bears, it's not the 2000 Ravens, it's not the 1970 Steelers. I get that. But when you've got a guy that's this good, that can play at this level, I think they'll be fine. I think this was a game on the road because you predicted this, Alex. You said West Coast trip. It's a bit of a trap game with Detroit next week. They came out flat. So it didn't surprise me. Josh Allen just put them on their back and made this game fun to watch, made it competitive. For the Rams, really quick, look, they needed this win. I mean, like I said, this was a desperate football team. They needed this win a lot more than the Bills did. They're still alive now to win that division. And when they're healthy, they're a dangerous football team. To your point with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Stafford playing like this. Look, Stafford has been red hot the last month or so. And I'm looking ahead to that Thursday night football game. The Rams are going to play the Niners. That's a huge game out west, really for the division now after the Niners bounce back from that embarrassing loss to the Bills last week. But look, they lose Isaac Grendo. He's been really good. That's another big loss for them. This team just has too many injuries to really compete like they have the last few seasons, of course. So they're on the brink here, and I think this could be the knockout punch coming here on Thursday night from the Rams, a team that's surging right now. Vikings and Falcons here, because this was an interesting game here, Al, kind of an under-the-radar game. But look, Sam Darnold, we talked about him. We've talked about him a lot this year, really, but he had a little bit of a midseason slump. And I mentioned on this podcast, it looked like he was kind of starting to turn back into Sam Darnold, but he's really bounced back these last couple of weeks. And the Vikings, look, they have a serious decision to make right now at the end of the year, because I think they've got to make the decision if they're going to re-sign this guy. And if they do, what does that mean for J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota? Because, look, they took this guy in the first round. We knew coming in that he was a younger developmental quarterback, but now he's coming off an injury. He lost his whole rookie year. Darnold has been great. What do the Vikings do here, Alex? Because he is playing at a top 10 level right now, and I know they're going to have to pay him, but man, how do you move off of this guy when he fits your system and your culture so well?
I'm sorry, I stalled for a minute because I was patting myself on the back because I told you all before the season Sam Darnold was going to have a very good season. This is actually a great season that he's having, but I knew he was going to be very good in this offense. He's got his team at 11-2, 68%, basically 3,300 yards, 28 TDs, and 10 interceptions. He is playing at a top, I won't say elite, but he's playing at a top 5 level this season. I was never high going back to when we were doing our evaluations. I had J.J. McCarthy as last in terms of my quarterback ranking of the top 6 guys. He was last on my board. I would not have drafted him if I was Minnesota, but nonetheless, they did not understand why they did. But now here comes the conundrum. I actually saw a Vikings podcast actually, where they were saying pay Sam Darnold and trade J.J. McCarthy for picks. Now, I'm not sure if that's what they feel in that building, because they really could have used that top pick and gone defense. You know, what does that team look like if they drafted Dallas Turner and Latu and had them on that defense, or they drafted Quinyon Mitchell, what that team would really look like if you gave Brian Flores those pieces. But as of right now, I'm confident in Sam Darnold. Again, he's only 27 years old. He just turned 27 this year, so this is not a Kirk Cousins situation where he's 35. You can say, all right, we'll cut him and move on. No, he's only 27. And I know it's going to I'm not going to pay him the $55 million, but can I give him Daniel Jones money and maybe perhaps he accepts? It'll be a bidding war, but you put him out there, you see what he says, because he's comfortable here. He's finally rebuilt his career here. I'm not sure he even wants to leave the comforts of a Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, and that offensive line and that coach. So If I'm Sam Darnold, I want to come back here. I want to play, and if that's the case, and Kevin O'Connell signs off on it, I'm trading JJ McCarthy, and I'm moving ahead confidently.
Yeah, because I think JJ still has some trade value. Obviously, a young guy. There was other teams that liked him coming out of Michigan. There's other teams that are going to want to take a flyer on a guy that still has some developmental upside. So why not? I mean, why not? I'm with you because look, who's playing better in the NFC than Sam Darnold right now? It's a short list. I mean, who's playing better? Jared Goff, maybe? Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
I mean, I'll take him over Jalen Hurts. I'll take him over Baker Mayfield. I mean, who else who in the NFC is playing better than this guy? I mean, he has been lights out, and he gives them a real shot to make a run here, and it's pretty incredible. Look, to flip to the other side, because the ironic thing is they played the Falcons of all teams, and this game showed exactly why the Vikings moved off of Cousins. Because look, Cousins had been good for them. I'm not trying to say he was bad when he was in Minnesota. He was a good, solid quarterback, but he didn't have the ceiling of a guy like this. And they knew it. And they realized, look, we're going to continue to be good, not great, if we stay with Cousins. We have to move on. Sam Darnold gives them that next gear. He just has that extra gear that Cousins doesn't have. And it was perfect because he's on the other side of the field on Sunday looking like a guy who, quite frankly, can't play anymore. I mean, his game is really falling apart. The Falcons are in a free fall right now, and they have a lot of money tied up into this guy. It's a mess in Atlanta.
You should have started Michael Penix. You should have never drafted Michael Penix, one or the other. This guy was, along with Bo Nix, regardless of how I felt about Bo Nix coming out, these two guys to me were the most pro-ready to play. And you kind of fumbled it. I know a lot of people love to say having two quarterbacks is a good problem. I don't think so in this particular situation because I'm pretty sure that locker room is divided. And if I'm Atlanta, I'm pulling my brass together, minus Kirk Cousins, who's a part of that, and I'm saying, what's the pulse of my locker room? What do they feel about Kirk Cousins? Should we go in a different direction and start the clock on this kid because he's already a fifth year, 6 year in, and he kind of seen everything. Should we start this now and be ready for next season and just have Kirk sit on the bench and maybe trade him in the offseason? But I'm definitely having that conversation because they've just simply been Jekyll and Hyde for a bit of the season, but really Jekyll and Hyde over the last 4 weeks of the season.
Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Browns. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this game, but look, this team is fascinating because we have really seen a transformation from Russell Wilson. I mean, he has completely revitalized his career in Pittsburgh, and it was starting to almost look over for this guy going into this last offseason. It felt like this was really, and I said this on the pod, that this was really his last chance to validate himself as a starter in this league. If this didn't work in Pittsburgh, I thought this is probably it for him, and he's going to be holding a clipboard for the next few years. And he has really played good football. And look, no George Pickens, and it didn't really matter. Now, he was a little shaky in spots, but overall, man, this guy's playing some good football. And look, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. I did not think this would work. I thought the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to be what they usually are, which is a 500 type of ball club with a great defense and a great coach that just can't move the ball enough. He has given this offense a spark, and it's clearly not just a 1 or 2 game sample size now. We've seen that this offense really hasn't looked this good in what feels like forever. I mean, it feels like a long time. They've had some really, really below average quarterback play for the last several years. Look, like I said, he wasn't great in this game, but he's making enough plays for them to win, and he's taking care of the football.
How dare you not talk about the star of this game, which is Jameis Winston. The Jameis Winston experience is the greatest ride in football right now. But all jokes aside, yeah, I mean, again, another pat to myself in the back. I'm actually hot this year. We're going to talk about that at some point. But I said Russell Wilson's going to a team that's similar to what he had in Seattle. He's got a players coach in Mike Thomas, similar to Pete Carroll, that's going to be able to protect him. He's got a strong defense. He's got a solid running game, and he's got a weapon in George Pickens, which is something we're going to have to talk about because he's had a hamstring injury, and they're in the part of their schedule that's just going to get a lot more tougher. So it's going to be interesting to hear us talk about on Thursday. But good job, Russell Wilson. You revitalized your career, and they can no longer talk about you the way they spoke about you in the past.
Yeah, I'll give you some gas money because I think you're going to run out of gas on all these victory laps today, Alex. Russell Wilson, look, I don't know if he has a ceiling anymore for them to make a Super Bowl run. And that's kind of the tough spot that they're in, because this is a good football team. We know they've got a great coach. So we know they've got a great defense. They've got a defensive player of the year in J.J. Watt. They've got really a 3-level defense that can play all over the place now. That secondary is good. The linebackers are great. Some of these young guys who, by the way, I'll take a victory lap on. I told you Keanu Benton, I said, will be a breakout player this year. He's really come on. They're playing some great football. And like I said, Russ has really stabilized that position. The problem is I don't know if they're a Super Bowl contender. And I've heard some media people recently say that they think they could be. Are you buying them as a team that could possibly make a run here, Alex? Could they actually knock off a team like Kansas City, a team like Buffalo, and make a run in the AFC?
No, but I think they could have themselves in a position in the second half where if everything falls right, and like you said, your defensive player of the year, TJ Watt, can make a play, which he seems to do every single time when they get in those situations. I think they can be opportunistic and perhaps upset a team. I wouldn't be surprised if they made it to the AFC Championship game, just simply because if Russ can continue to play this way and their defense can continue to be as opportunistic as it is, there's no reason that I wouldn't be surprised if they made it to the AFC Championship game.
Is Mike Tomlin the coach of the year?
Oh no, I'm gonna sit with Kevin O'Connell on that one right now. I'm gonna Kevin O'Connell deserves everything that he's getting. Of course, Dan Campbell having that, but I'm really gonna stick with Kevin O'Connell here on that one.
I think Tomlin deserves some mentioning. And because, look, this team, I think people thought they'd be good, but there was a lot of question marks around the quarterback situation with Russ and with Fields, and would this work? And look, I'll be the first one to point the finger at myself. I didn't think they would work like this. I didn't think they'd be this good. I didn't think they'd be sitting there with one of the best seeds in the AFC and really making a run at another AFC North title. So I think he's done a phenomenal job just handling the situation, knowing when to pull the right strings at the right time.
And you know what? I'll add Dan Quinn. I believe he deserves a shout out as well for what he's doing with that rookie team, and a lot of B guys, not A guys, a lot of B guys on that team that he's doing some things with in a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, it's a good take too. So let's move to the NFC West here for a second, because we had a battle out there. Seahawks dominate the Cardinals. Look, Kyler Murray played like garbage. 2 more ugly picks in this game. 5 interceptions, only 3 touchdowns in his last 3 games. I mean, this was a huge game. Arizona needed this win. They got smashed by the Seahawks a couple weeks ago. They completely no-showed again in a big spot. And this is who they are. This is who Kyler is. This is who the Cardinals are. They're a roller coaster ride. Sometimes they look motivated. They look inspired. They can play really good football. And other times they just completely no-show. It's why I really don't have any trust in this team at all. But looking at the Seahawks here, this is starting to look like a team that can make the playoffs here. They have a talented defense here that, look, Mike McDonald, look, his defense is starting to click over there. And it took a little while to kind of integrate his system with these guys in Seattle, but we know he's a great defensive mind, and it's starting to work. And look at how bad the Ravens defense is this year with basically all the same guys. I mean, it's pretty much the same roster from last year for the most part. They were one of the best defenses in all of football last year. They're terrible this year. So what an impact Mike McDonald has made leaving that team and coming over to Seattle and turning this defense around. Now, I think the question mark remains for this team is Geno Smith. And look, Geno has been solid. I'm not trying to talk crap about Geno. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. He's been solid. But I think they're in a similar spot to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we just talked about. Both of these teams are going to win enough games clearly at this point. They're not going to be able to draft high enough to take a top quarterback in this class. But long term, you have to question if Russ and Geno are actually good enough to make these teams contenders, even though they both have really good rosters around them. Because we're looking at 2 good rosters. You know, Tomlin, obviously a much more proven coach, but Mike McDonald looks like he could be a good coach in this league as well. I wonder what the situation is there. I think the Steelers re-signed Russ. I'm not so sure about Geno.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Geno either. We know they have Sam Howell, who actually last year was a bit of a gunslinger, but that offense was horrific in offensive line. So maybe there's something there I don't know, and I'm not sure. But I will give credence to what you said about Mike McDonald. Is last year the Seahawks defense with the same people? There's not really new people except for a draft, but with the same people, they were 30th. They're 18th now. So that's clearly an indication of Mike McDonald and his prowess on defense, why this team is playing better. Zach Charbonnet, when Zach Charbonnet needs to start, he shows up. 22 carries, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns, plus 7 carries for 59 yards. And if you've been listening to this podcast, Brad did call out Zach Charbonnet as his number 2 running back 2 years ago when he was coming out, and he's showing up and proving that he fits the bill as a starting running back with Kenneth Walker out. As far as Arizona, I know there's not much really that needs to be talked about there. Marvin Harrison, the phenom, as I was told, the generational player, 4 for 49. So there's that. And again, I'll just continue to say if Kyler Murray's 6 feet, we're having a completely different conversation about him. But alas, it is what it is. The only thing they can really do is really, I would say, get rookie Trey Benson more involved, and they should really be. He threw 38 times, but I understand they were behind it, but they should be running the ball 35 to 40 times a game. So, Brad, there's a game that we didn't talk about that I told everybody to pick. Actually, I told you to pick it both ways, take the money line and take the points, but it was the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Panthers. We don't need to get into the game. We need to get into the Philadelphia Eagles and what's going on there inside that locker room. A team that's 11-2, a game out of perhaps getting home field advantage, and what's going on between Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Nick Sirianni, and why is there so much leakage coming out of this team, and what's going on for a team that at this point in time should have Super Bowl hopes, but instead we're talking about what Brandon Graham said, what's being talked about, what he retracted, what AJ Brown said when he spoke to so-and-so from this podcast or that podcast. We need to talk about that at some point in time, because this should not be happening to an 11-2 team that's on an 8 to 9 game winning streak, and a running back that's trying to vie for 2,000 yards and perhaps challenge for the record. We shouldn't be talking about this, but I do understand AJ Brown's problem. If you watch the tape, I'll actually send Brad so we could put up on the Twitter some of the plays that AJ Brown is talking about where he's wide open. And I'm talking, he was wide open for a 90-yard touchdown, sitting with nobody within 7 yards of him. And Jalen Hurts didn't look in his direction, and he checked down. So I understand AJ Brown's frustration. However, we should not know about it.
I think this comes back to the leadership of this team, and the person I'm mostly talking about here is Nick Sirianni. Because, look, you're the head coach. You've got to keep this team buttoned up. You got to keep this stuff in-house. And when your players are making these kind of comments and stirring stuff up on a team that's playing really good football, by the way, this is the last thing you need right here. You're making a playoff push. You're trying to lock down one of the top seeds in your conference and make another run at a Super Bowl here. And you've got these types of distractions going on. This is not good. And this is not the kind of thing you see from an Andy Reid, a Mike Tomlin, a John Harbaugh. You don't see this kind of crap. You don't see this stuff leaking out into the media and players feuding and going on podcasts and taking shots at each other. You don't see it from these quality coaches and these quality teams, but yet we're seeing it here from the Eagles. And I think it points back to a lack of leadership from Nick Sirianni and a lack of control that he has over this team. Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. We personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. College football playoff rankings are out, and look, all the talk right now is about if Alabama should have made it over SMU. A little bit of controversy here with the selection committee. Look, I'm not going to lie, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. I know Alabama had 3 losses. SMU only had 2 losses. But for me, I thought Alabama had the much better resume. They had multiple top 25 wins. They play in a much, much tougher conference, of course, and a much tougher schedule. I know they had the bad loss to Oklahoma. I know they had a bad loss to Vandy. I totally get that. But who did SMU beat that's any good? They were 0-2 in top 25 games. They don't have a signature win on their resume, and they lost their conference championship game to a mediocre Clemson team. So for me, I was actually shocked. I thought for sure Alabama would get in the back door here. Before we jump into the rest of this college football talk here, I'm going to ask you, did they get this right, Alex?
Yeah, they got it right. Sorry, shouldn't have lost, especially to Vandy. I know any given Saturday at this point, but you shouldn't have. You should not have lost to Vanderbilt. If you don't lose to Vanderbilt, we're having a different discussion. You're in. I believe you're literally in if you don't lose to Vandy, and that is a terrible loss. I understand that SMU hadn't lost, but they played the schedule but that's the thing that you do. You play the schedule in front of you. This ultimately, what I'll say to that, Brad, outside of everything I just said, what we're looking at is ultimately going to change, and I'm not sure they're going to do the buys the way that they're doing them now with the conference championship. I think it's going to go by an actual ranking. From what I looked at, I believe Alabama was number 11 in the final college football rankings, but because Clemson won their championship, they're in, and other team, and SMU is also in, and Alabama is on the outside looking in, right? So that's why I believe in the next 2 years they are going to change this entire format, and they're going to go through a true college football playoff ranking, and it won't be your championship in terms of your respective conference. They're going to give it to the best teams. It's going to be in Oregon and Georgia, Texas, and maybe Penn State. I'm just looking at what I'm seeing right now. That'll be your top 4, and then they'll get the buys, and then everybody else will fall in place behind, or some way, shape, or form that some of these other teams would have been able to get in, because I can assure you would have heard a tirade from me had BYU won out and gotten a bye.
Yeah, we got to get into this because, look, I think the gap between the SEC and the ACC right now is massive. I think Alabama had some bad L's, and I get that. But SMU, like I said, doesn't have a signature win. Bama has 3 top 25 wins. I don't think either one of those teams can win a national title, but that's not what this discussion is about. It's about having an opportunity to play in the playoff. I think there is almost little doubt that if SMU played Alabama right now, Alabama is at least a 10-point favorite in that game. So I'm with you. They have to change this format, and I'm glad we're getting into this because I've got some thoughts on this. So hold my beer here. The format is already flawed. Look, I love the 12-team playoff expansion. I love that we're doing this. It's what's been needed for college football for years. But there's some real flaws already, and you hit on it, Alex. The conference champions getting an automatic qualify spot looks like a major mistake right now in year 1 already, because look, Boise State is the 3 seed. after winning the Mountain freaking West. They're the 3 seed. Look, no disrespect to Boise State. They're a good football team. There's no reason they should be the 3 seed with a first-round bye. Clemson, which I'm glad you brought up Clemson here. Clemson has 3 losses in a really bad ACC this year. That was a very down year for that conference. They were ranked 16, to your point about the final rankings, but somehow they make a playoff spot because of the automatic qualifier format. And then let's talk about the seeding here for a second, which I also think is really screwed up here. Oregon goes undefeated. The only team in any power conference to go undefeated, and they do it in the Big Ten, no less. They get the number 1 spot, and now you can make a really strong case here that Penn State, who lost to Oregon in the Big Ten title game, has a much easier path to a title as a 6 seed. They play SMU at home and Boise State in the next round. Oregon plays the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee. How does that make any sense? And in their bracket, to go on to a national championship, they'd have to face Texas and Georgia. None of this makes any sense how this shook out, and it all comes back to the format, and they have to fix this format. I mean, this is a serious issue. Could you imagine if Detroit Lions, let's say they finished with the number 1 seed in the NFC, and all of a sudden they had to play the number 2 team in the NFC, the number 3 team in the NFC, right back to back to get to a Super Bowl? It doesn't make any sense. We wouldn't do that in the NFL because it doesn't make sense, and college football has to follow suit.
Yeah, I agree. I will just say just one quick correction. Georgia's in the Boise State bracket where they would end up in the Orange Bowl to go to the championship. They would, but you're right. Oregon would have to face off against Ohio State. Would have to go through teams like Ohio State, Tennessee, or Texas. I'll leave Clemson out. Those would be the teams they would have to go through to get to the championship, according to what I see right now. Whereas Boise State, like you said, they would only have to. Penn State can probably beat Boise State. Whatever you feel about Indiana, but this looks like a collision course for perhaps Penn State and Georgia in that championship, in that game, to go to the championship in the other bracket. So it's going to be interesting. But like I said, I think at this point, it's the first one. We'll get through it. They'll fix it. And, just going forward, don't lose to Vanderbilt. Sorry, but they're going to fix it. It'll get fixed going forward. And at some point, me and Brad will have this other conversation about college football and where it's really headed in the next 5 years.
When you look at teams, we talked about Penn State here, but also look at Texas here. Texas and Penn State, the number 5 and 6 seeds here, I think they actually have the most favorable paths to a national title despite having to play an extra game here. And that's not what this was intended to do. The intention of this was to get a first-round bye as these top seeds so that it makes it easier to win a title, which is how it should be. But yet, somehow it looks like Oregon has probably the toughest road to a title, even though they're the undefeated number 1 team. It is so screwed up right now. And look, the Longhorns, they get the lowest seeded team in Clemson. They get to play them at home. But then they also get the benefit of going to the Peach Bowl to face Arizona State if they win. So they have to look at changing this format. There's no doubt about it. Now, look, later on, when we get a little closer to the playoff, we're going to dive into these games and do a much deeper dive. We're going to preview these games, might even have a special guest come on and do it with us. And we're going to make picks, and we're going to make betting picks and pick these winners. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to kind of save some of that when we get a little closer to the playoff. But I want to end on this last question here. Alex, before we do all that in an upcoming episode, who wins the national championship?
Texas will win the national championship.
Texas, man, I like it. You know what? I like it a lot, Alex. I think Texas is in a prime position to win this as well. I think the only team that's really been a thorn in their side has been Georgia. And the first time they played, Georgia beats them thoroughly. The second time they play, it's a very, very close game. Goes down to the wire, goes down to overtime. And now there's real question marks about Georgia's quarterback situation. So I think Texas is the team I'm picking as well, Alex. Look, I think if Oregon had a better playoff seeding, so to speak, if they didn't have such a tough road to the championship, I would probably pick Oregon just based on maybe being the most complete team, the most consistent team we've seen. But I'm with you. I think Texas has the talent and the easier path to a national title. So I'm going to take the Longhorns as well. If you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course on YouTube. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.